Hi, my name is Amy Lynch-Biniek, and I teach at Kutztown University in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. And I'm here with Misty Rudd to talk about my history of working with labor unions.
Okay, so Amy, let's start with what are your earliest memories and associations with unions? Anything from your childhood that was important?
There's a lot from my childhood. My father taught high school English for 36 years. And when he began teaching at Bishop Borelli High School in Kingston, Pennsylvania, they did not have a labor union. It's a parochial school, and no parochial schools had unions at the time. And he and other members of his faculty very, very bravely risking their own jobs because they didn't have the same public protections because it's a parochial school, formed their own union. And from their success, they formed a diocesan-wide union. But that my early childhood was filled with union meetings because they didn't have space to do this.
Did you go to these meetings?
I didn't go to them, but they were in my house. So, I'm in the living room watching cartoons, and there's a union meeting happening at the kitchen table. There's just all that noise of people discussing things that I didn't understand at the time. So there was a lot of that throughout my early childhood, and I associated it early on, honestly, with familial discord, right? Because there's lots of late night union meetings in my house, and my mother wants to put the kids to bed, and there's people there, and so it was just a lot of long hours and hard work for my dad and for his colleagues, and also then for their families by extension. So I knew that it was important work, and I knew that it was serious work, but it was also stuff that takes a toll and could be trying. And, as I got older, I understood more of what the union was about. I went to the high school where my father taught, too. So I had, suddenly when he was, talking about individual people, I knew who he was talking about. And, when he talked about the administrators and management and some of the issues, I could see those issues at work around me. So, and my father's a great storyteller, so he was always telling stories of interesting things that happen at negotiations and funny things that happen at negotiations, and he collects these. But one of my favorites, if I could,
absolutely,
tell it, I remember he talked about early on. Parochial school teachers still don't make very much. In fact, when I started teaching public school, my first year teaching public school, I made more than my father after 20-some years teaching public school or parochial school. We weren't making very much, and they were in a very hard battle for a new contract, and someone on the administrative team said to the team of teachers who were negotiating, you're spreading lies. We understand you're spreading lies to the public. You're telling them that we pay you so little that you're all having to go on public assistance. And one of my father's colleagues reached into his pocket and pulled out his food stamps and threw them on the table, and the whole administrative team went, we need a break, we need time out. And so, stories like that they're kind of funny, they're also kind of sad. Yeah. They drove home to me that, this isn't about just being contentious with management. This is often about being able to feed your family. It was about being able to feed the family for us.
100%. Can we jump forward quite a few years to your involvement with APSPA?
Sure. One of the reasons that I wanted to interview at Kutztown was because it's a unionized school. Higher ed unions are still not the norm, so it was exciting to me to interview with a unionized school because, again, it's always been a part of my family. And I remember very distinctly sitting in Kevin Mahoney's office, shout out to Kevin, during part of my interview, and he got up momentarily to leave. He had to step out, and I'm sitting in his office, and he had a bookcase filled with texts on labor issues in higher ed. And I just remember looking over the titles and thinking, yeah, okay, this is cool. Oh, and he came back in. I said, so are you involved with the union at all on campus? And then I got to hear, of course, Kevin's very involved with the union. I got to hear all about APSCA KU, and I think he was excited to know that I was interested in the union, and I talked a little bit about my background. And so I think from the moment I took the gig at KU, there was no way I was escaping it if I had wanted to, because Kevin knew, here's someone with a history in labor who could be part of the team. So as I think maybe the second faculty meeting of the year, they were looking for someone to be a new representative for the English department on Representative Council, APSCA for Representative Council, and Kevin's like, nudge. It would be great. It would be great. So that was my first step.
Were you like, apprehensive about that? Did you?
Yes and no. I think part of being raised in unions, I have a lot of trust that, well, the union's here to protect me, so there really isn't a lot of risk, because that's what the union's for. But at the same time, of course, I think it's natural when you're untenured faculty to have that nagging voice in the back of your head that says, you're in your first year, do you want to be, on the council? But, what I realized was, okay, I'm on the council, but that at first it could be a learning experience for me. So I wasn't necessarily very vocal in the beginning, but I was learning, and I was understanding the culture of the school and the culture of the union and the culture of management in the PASHE system. And it really took until maybe the second year of being on the council. It's my cat hissing in the background, sorry. The second year of being on the council for me to kind of overcome that, not fear, but just wariness of being vocal and to start to really speak up.
So what about the time commitment? Were you hesitant about, because you knew from your father how much time it would take, time and energy. Were you hesitant about committing?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah. Yeah. I mean, and the more you become involved in labor issues, the more people do ask of your time. But certainly, I've gone from representative council to working on grievance for a year, and now I'm on the meet and discuss team. And it's more meetings, it's long hours, but the way I look at it is the payoff for those hours is so vital to a healthy work environment that, I'm getting those hours back in something else. Mm-hmm. And someone has to put the hours in, right? I mean, we've got to step it up at some point to invest the time in the union if the union is going to invest the time in us.
So it's really service to your community.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about your roles in APSCA, or do you want to go on to the next question?
Let's go to the next question. Okay.
So the final question is originally worded as, how does your teaching respond to or reflect your beliefs about unions? But another way of asking that is, has the topic of unions ever come up in your classrooms?
Yeah, in a few ways. If indirectly, I don't have labor issues or unions specifically in my curriculum or built into the readings. But in one instance, more informally, we have something in the English department that a lot of departments have called senior seminar. And as part of it, majors are kind of exploring possible things they can do after graduation. And when that class is discussing graduate school and possible jobs in higher ed, the teachers traditionally invite a bunch of us and other professors to discuss our experience with graduate school and with being professors. And I've kind of found, I've done this for about 3 years, maybe 4, that I've found myself in the position of being the only one who's, okay, one of us has got to address the labor issues here. Because there's a lot of people talking very normally and naturally about how much they love their subject matter and how much they love teaching and isn't studying, Victorian prose or composition and rhetoric, whatever it is, wonderful. And yes, it is. But where a lot of people were kind of just focused on, oh, isn't it great now that we're professors? I would say, okay, but we need to back up and say, well, what happened between graduate school or during graduate school and the reality now of being a professor? So, for instance, in my MA program, I was a teaching assistant, and there was no union, and I worked long hours, and there was no health insurance, and we attempted to unionize, and there's very few unions in graduate schools. We failed, and there's that hard truth of, you're kind of abused labor as a graduate assistant in a lot of schools, and then afterwards, you don't go out and just get your full-time tenure track dream job immediately. Rather, okay, I studied medieval English literature. And my first job is going to be as a temporary employee teaching composition or 3 sections of introduction to literature. And, you know, the problems of the temporary system are very well known. And, you know, this isn't something we necessarily always tell our future graduate students, right? Kind of seldom this, isn't it wonderful to study things on the graduate level? Of course it is, but there are all these labor issues tied to it, and I think that we need to educate our undergraduates and our graduate students about the labor culture of labor in higher education if they're going to enter that. You know, so I always felt like I was kind of a Debbie Downer in the senior seminars, and I said, but I do love my job. I do, but you know.
Do you remember the percentage or the ratio of temporary to permanent faculty when you came to Kutztown?
When I came to Kutztown, that was when there was still a bill in place capping it lower than it is now. I can't remember the exact percentage off the top of my head, but it was lower. Right. But it wasn't. It was a contract negotiation the year I started, so very quickly after I arrived, it went up to its current, which is what
I think it's 25.
It's capped at 25.
Yeah, I think it was 10.
It was 10. So it was just briefly 10 when I started, and then the new contract went up to 25, which
right.
is unfortunate.
Right. Any final comments you have about unions to your potential viewers?
Well, I do think that as those of us who are passionate about labor issues and unions in both higher ed and secondary ed know sometimes the rhetoric surrounding us can be very negative, and I think that part of what we have to do a better job of is being better spokespersons for what we do and representing our work very positively. And so when I talk to students about higher ed and labor or secondary ed and labor, whether it's in something like senior seminar or in my teaching and writing class, I always try to connect what we do to quality education. So yes, labor unions are about my healthcare benefits, and it's about my insurance, and it's about being paid a reasonable wage for the labor I do. And those things are very vital. But I think we need to also play up more that our work environments and our work situations pay off in the quality of education we're then able to provide. And, you know, I think we maybe haven't done a good enough job connecting the work of unions to the work of quality education. We're trying, and it's something that I'm very interested in writing and talking more about, because you can't have quality education without teachers who have the time and the space and the academic freedom and the benefits and the pay to be able to teach well.